Today we're ranking every Conjurer in Hunter x Hunter. This is the final category in the series and it's one of the most bizarre categories. This is the basic criteria I used and let's get into it. In 13th we have Owl. Owl is the perfect example of why the Conjurer category is a bit weird. A lot of Conjurers have utility abilities. This means most of them have pretty low combat potential and Owl is the perfect example of that. His ability itself is very good as it lets the user shrink anything that they put into their blanket. This includes humans and large objects like cars. This is a great ability in general, but for combat, if it hits it would be good, but hitting it isn't super easy even with a large range. On top of his ability, Owl is unfortunately a shadow beast, which means there's basically no way he's strong based on the performance of the other beasts. In 12th, we have Kurapika. Kurapika is by far the weakest member of the Phantom Troupe and it's not even close. Much like Owl, he has an insane ability, but it's basically useless for combat. He can make copies out of anything he touches with his left hand. These copies also act as N for Kurapika after the copying occurs. As I said, this is an insane ability. Being able to copy endlessly can lead to some crazy stuff, but despite this craziness, he has zero combat ability that we see. He's short and frail, and his only feat of any kind is running on this wall for like a second. The only reason he's above Owl is because of his status as a troop member, but he really can't compare to anyone on this list, which is saying something considering there are not many strong Conjurers. At 11 we have Abengane. This is the Nen exorcist from Greed Island. The main reason he's down here is we just don't know anything about him. We don't know his strengths, we don't know his weaknesses, and we don't know if he has any other abilities. We just don't know anything about this dude, and while he seems strong without any other info, we can't put him any higher. At 10 we have Chitu. Chitu is probably the worst Nen user in the entire show. He created two abilities and neither of them synergized with his speed or his desire to go fast. His first was basically a domain expansion from Jujutsu Kaisen, where he and an opponent go into a separate space and they can't leave until the opponent tags Chitu. In theory, this sounds like a good ability for him, but as we saw with Moral, the most effective strat is to just not interact. The other ability is this crossbow thing, but we never saw him use it. The main reason he's above the other three is because he's a Chimera Ant, so he automatically has increased durability and he's also one of the fastest characters in the show. Those are really the only positives he has, as he is dumb as a rock and doesn't hit particularly hard either. At 9 we have another Chimera Ant, Welfin. Welfin is a much better ant than Chitu. He has an ability that can sometimes guarantee a kill, and even if it doesn't, it's still very painful. He's also pretty intelligent and has a strong sense of morals. He's also one of the Chimera Ants we see the most of, so it's easy to gauge his strength. He seems fairly strong for an ant, but it's hard to tell how well he would do against more experienced Nen users, or Nen users with more versatile abilities like the person we're going to talk about at 8th. He is overall decent, and that's why he's at 9th. At 8th we have one of the newest Nen users, Henry. Also, I have no idea how to say this guy's name, so just bear with me. Henry has the ability to turn animals into objects and vice versa. We've seen him use this to turn doves into handcuffs, a camera into a cat, guns into snakes, and more. What's really interesting about these animals is they retain aspects of the items they were before. So the snakes still shoot bullets, and the cat can still take pictures like a camera. This ability seems to have a huge amount of versatility and a huge amount of potential, but it's not without its drawbacks, as there is a limit to how many times the ability can be used per day, and the user also has to prep for whatever he is doing. The main reason that he's down here is that he doesn't seem to have that much experience with Nen, and even he says that his understanding of Nen is nothing compared to that of the Phantom Troupe, which we are about to talk about again because at 7th we have Shizuku. Shizuku uses a vacuum named Blinky. This vacuum is able to suck up any non-living matter and do so infinitely. All Shizuku has to do is tell it what to suck up and it will do it. The most notable usage of this is of course during the Mafia massacre of Yorknu, but she also used it offensively when she sucked the blood out of Pike. This is not the only way to use Blinky for offense though, as she can just as easily bludgeon her opponents to death. While Blinky is generally a support ability, its offensive capabilities cannot be understated, and this versatility also showcases Shizuku's intelligence. Overall, Shizuku is a good Nen user, but from here on out we are getting into some of the more serious users and she just can't really keep up. In 6th we have Genthuru. Genthuru is a weird one to rank. On one hand, he is a major antagonist and has a super deadly ability, but on the other, there are also some very obvious holes in his skill set. His general abilities surround explosions. His more deadly explosion is Countdown. To activate Countdown, he must fulfill two conditions. The first is to tap someone and say the word bomber, and the second is to explain his ability. Once he does, a bomb is implanted in the victim. This bomb will count down from 6,000 by heartbeat, and the only way to deactivate activate it is by touching Genthru and saying, "I caught the bomber." The only other way to escape this explosion is if all 3 bombers say "release" together. It's heavily implied that this ability is a guaranteed kill for those who get hit by it, as it killed everyone who was victimized by Genthru. His other ability is Little Flower, which allows him to create explosions from his hands. These are way weaker than Countdown, but they're still a threat regardless. So what are his weaknesses? Well, first of all, he isn't super intelligent, as he was outsmarted by Greed Island era Gon. Not only this, but Little Flower can be easily thwarted, as it just takes a little bit of Nen concentration to prevent damage. He also lacks infighting accomplishments, as he really only fought Gon and mediocre Nen users. While Genthru isn't an awful Nen user, he does leave a lot to be desired in terms of strength, especially when compared to the other antagonists and especially compared to the people above him on this list. It's time to get into the top 5, but before we do, please consider subscribing. I know. Shilling for subs in 2023 is cringe, but guess what? This is an anime channel. The entire thing is cringe. If you like anime content, then please consider subscribing. You really have no reason not to, as you can just unsubscribe later, and YouTube is gonna show you the content you want to see anyway. At 5th we have Tsubone. Tsubone is a lot like Bisky. She has a great ability, but that ability is not why she's up at 5th. She just has an incredible base to work with. Tsubone is the strongest butler of the Zoldyck family, and she proves her worth as soon as she's introduced. She's able to keep up with speed of lightning, and she's incredibly perceptive and intelligent. She was able to understand situations involving Killua and Aloka almost instantly, and can decipher new information just as quickly, making her extremely adaptable in every situation. This is the kind of skill that can really only be gained through years of experience, which is, well, reflected by her age. I really wish I had more to say about her, but there's really not much else to it. She's a really solid Nen user, and that's that. Coming in at 4th, we have Nav. Nav is one of 2 Conjurers that I might have miscategorized. In my defense, they're listed as both an emitter and a Conjurer on the Wikipedia, so it's not entirely my fault. Anyway, Nav is an amazing Nen user. Like most of the Conjurers, his ability is not exactly combat-based, as it allows him to create a giant building out of a pocket dimension and use it at will. This ability allows him to create portals that other Nen users can use as well. To be honest, what we've seen from him isn't that impressive from a combat point of view. While he does have Scream, which allows him to use portals for offense, it's not an ability that is great for general combat, as it's easy to see and definitely something you would want to avoid if you were a decent Nen user. Regardless of this, his ability is one of the best in the show, and it offers a huge amount of versatility and flexibility in non-combat situations. He was selected for the Punitive Force, which proves he does have some degree of strength, but unfortunately I don't know if that degree of strength is enough to get him into the top 3. Next at 3rd, we have a fan favorite, Knuckle. Knuckle has one of the most overly complicated abilities in Hunter x Hunter. It's basically taxes, but worse. Knuckle can activate his ability APR after landing a punch. Once the ability is attached, it will increase the amount of Nen stored in it based on the flow of the battle. When Knuckle lands hits, the amount goes up, but when he gets hit, the amount goes down. On top of this flow of battle, APR also accrues interest over time, so the longer the battle goes on, the more this number will increase. If the number reaches a certain threshold, it will force the opponent into Zetsu for 30 days, and they will be unable to use Nen for that time. This ability is great when it comes to drawn out battles of attrition, but against opponents looking for a quick kill, it might not be as effective. This is because APR won't be able to get to the point of forcing the opponent into bankruptcy, which is the whole point of the ability. Knuckle is a great Nen user overall, but this top 3 is where the competition gets really intense, and I'm just not sure Knuckle can keep up with number 1 or number 2. Speaking of second, it's time to talk about everybody's favorite emo kid, Kurapika. Kurapika is both a specialist and a conjurer. His conjurer abilities are centered around chains. These are the healing thumb, which allowed him to heal a broken arm in just a matter of seconds, the thieving index finger, which allows Kurapika to steal a Nen ability for a one-time use, chain jail, which forces any member of the Phantom Troupe into a Zetsu-like state, the dowsing chain, which allows Kurapika to tell if people are lying or not, and Arbiter's little finger, which lets Kurapika kill people if they break the condition he sets upon implanting a dagger in their heart. On top of these 5 conjurer-based abilities, he also has Emperor Time, which basically lets him become a Nen master in every category. This ability also acts as a condition for a few abilities, such as the thieving index finger, Arbiter's little finger, and it also strengthens the dowsing chain. As I'm sure you can tell, Emperor Time is one of the most insane abilities in the show, and as such, it comes with a huge drawback. For every 10 seconds that Kurapika spends in Emperor Time, an hour is shaved off his life. This adds up quickly, especially with Stealth Dolphin. With all of these abilities in mind, Kurapika really becomes a one-man army. army. He was able to take out 2 Phantom Troop members and capture Chrollo, and he's also made himself a centerpiece of the Succession War. He has proven himself to be one of the strongest Nen users in the show, and seeing him at second should be no surprise at all. So who could be stronger than Kurapika? Well, it's none other than Kite. Kite is a monster of a Nen user, and many could consider him a Nen master. This is mostly due to years of experience, which led to a great ability and a great general skill set. Kite's main ability is Crazy Slots, which is an ability that allows him to summon a random weapon assigned from a number 1 through 9. We only get to see 3 of these, but from what we can tell, they are all powerful. The first one we're introduced to is the Silent Waltz Scythe, which is a single swing attack that cuts down practically anything in its radius. This was used multiple times to obliterate crowds of chimera ants and cleave trees in half as well. He also has his gun, which can one-shot chimera ants as well, and the last ability we saw from him was his mace. We never get to actually see him use this because, well, you know. In addition to Crazy Slots, he's also capable of using N in a 45-meter radius, which is huge. He's regarded by just about everyone as a strong Nen user, and even just his aura is enough to frighten many ants. Even P2 saw him as a fun opponent, which is pretty much the highest honor you can receive from a cat. He was also reborn as a chimera ant, but we don't know what this really means in terms of his abilities yet, so it's impossible to take this transformation into account. Kite is overall a great Nen user. I really have nothing negative to say about him, and that alone is enough for him to rank at the top of this list. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe and maybe check out my Twitter. There will be a link to that and my Discord in the comments down below. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again next week.